Well, hello, everybody. I guess, Craig, you informed me a little bit ago that this is episode 10. That's kind of a marking event, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's a milestone if you want to say that.
You know? And I figured we gotta figure out a different routine, too, because it seems like every time we do a show, there's another storm brewing.
That's true. It's been raining here in the Charlotte area for a couple of days. Well, it seems like a couple of days.
Well,
It was pouring earlier today.
Yeah, I've been off the radar for a few days, and I understand there's another hurricane. I didn't even know until yesterday.
That's true. Two shows ago, we had Florence coming at us.
And now we got, is it
whatever's
Michael?
going on out here, yeah.
I don't know. Well, hello, everyone. I am your co-host, Chris Gazdick, and Craig is with us here on Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast. We invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. Goal is, as always, to create emotional growth through the medium of this podcast. Please be aware this is not a delivery of therapy service in any kind. And we are still really looking for feedback and discussion. CraigThroughATherapist'sEyes.com and the Facebook spot that we have. This is the human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. Maybe with some help today.
Yes, we got a special guest today. I'm super excited to have Dan Miller on the show. I've been listening to Dan probably since 2009. I think Dan was probably the first podcast that I started listening to, and I listen to several now. And I always say that some podcasts come and go, but all this time later, I still listen to Dan's show. So I'm super excited to have Dan on the show with us today.
I must admit to the audience and to you, Dan, that I am not as familiar with his work until you talked to me about it, however many weeks or months ago, and I think you reached out. And the little that I know, I must say I'm pretty impressed. Craig, what do you know?
Well, I just read the bio off of Dan's website to introduce him, and then we'll bring him on. So, Dan Miller, president and self-dubbed creative thinker of 48 Days LLC, specializes in creative thinking for increased personal and business success. He believes that meaningful work blends our natural skills and abilities, our unique personality traits, and our dreams and passions. Dan is active in helping individuals redirect careers, evaluate new income sources, and achieve balanced living. He believes that a clear sense of direction can help us become all that God designed us to be. Dan is the author of the widely acclaimed 48 Days to the Work You Love, which I believe is also a New York Times bestseller, and No More Mondays. He has been a guest on CBS The Early Show, MSNBC's Hardball with Chris Matthews, and Fox Business News with Dave Ramsey's show. To hit some highlights, he hosts a weekly podcast that is consistently ranked number 1 under careers on iTunes. Dan is also a frequent speaker at conferences including Social Media Marketing World, Podcast Movement, New Media Europe, Launch and Coaching with Excellence. He also has an online community with over 15,000 active Eaglepreneurs. Committed to personal priorities, Dan and wife Joanne have been happily married for over 48 years. They have 3 grown children, all entrepreneurs, and they enjoy spending time with their 14 grandchildren.
Man, I got to say, Dan, enough of the topics that we've got here. I just want to pick your brain on what we're doing, man. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I am delighted to be here with you.
It's pretty neat for us because in the little that I have been able to get exposed to your work, really it kind of feels like we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways, and I'm going to be really curious about that as we go through talking today. You told me that you have a background in clinical psychology?
That's right. Academically, that was it. And guess what? It wasn't because I was trying to find a career. It was because I was trying to figure out Dan Miller.
Right. we do that, don't we?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of that. It's been a joy for me doing psychotherapy in some form or another for generally about 20 plus years now, and you learn a lot about yourself and life and working with people. I think that's a neat part of what we do.
Absolutely. Yep. The learning we get as a result is invaluable.
Right. I'll tell you, there's a very few sort of, I don't know if you'd call them theory sets, or I want to think of them as foundational views on kind of what works. And, I say I do cognitive therapy, but I really pull a lot of different things together. And, but I would like to say that I'm emotion-focused therapy because we're actually going to talk about it next week when we talk about a marriage model. But then there's these people, you've probably heard of them, that talk about parenting, and it's called Love and Logic. You ever hear of that?
I have not.
Man, you got to check their stuff out because when it comes to specifically parenting and managing a family, they're really similar to EFT stuff. And there's one more that I know you're familiar with. This is like the trifecta in my mind. Dave Ramsey's stuff. I understand you've come across him?
I have met that gentleman.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been best of friends for 30 years now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Craig told me you guys went in the mastermind circles, or how do you know Dave Ramsey?
We did. I invited him into a 2-year mastermind program years ago. And when we finished that, Dave and I said, golly, this is pretty cool. Let's continue this, but have more of a business focus than what that one was. So I set it up just like we had the group we just come out of. I said, you invite 5 guys, I'll invite 5 guys. That gives us 12. And we met for 14 years like that.
Wow.
Every Wednesday morning. Yep.
That is amazingly cool. Dude, if I can get an email to you or you can hook us up in some way, I would be so appreciative because since I came across this stuff, we took the class, my wife and I can't tell you how much it helped us.
Well, good.
And we really just took the class probably, I don't know, I put it off forever. But like I said, I would love to ask him if he realizes it or not. But he totally nails that emotion-focused therapy by a guy named John Gottman's material, and it has been so influential in the last 3 years of my practice that it's totally surprised me. I want to know if he knows those guys.
All right, that I don't know. Can't speak for him.
Yeah, it's amazingly similar, and like I said, his teaching modality and perspective is been very influential to say the least. 48days.com is where I check stuff out. Craig, what'd you get on 48 Days? Anything interesting?
There's lots of interesting stuff on 48 Days, yes. And I've been to a couple events at Dan's facility up there in Franklin, and it's always been a great experience.
Well, I'm standing right here in that old barn you visited.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were in the sanctuary.
Absolutely.
Cool deal. That's good stuff.
That is neat. I might need to get myself over there and say hello to my friends at the same time. So I want to start out with something that I think people have heard about. So we're about, breaking into awareness on mental health issues and stuff. And coaching is something that you very much do. So tell us a little bit about your experience with coaching and how you see what coaching is.
Sure. Well, I told you my background academically is in clinical psychology, so that positions me to be more in the psychotherapy model. I got my master's degree before I started my doctoral work and went with an organization out in Tustin, California. Now, get this title. You'll appreciate this title. It was called the Center for Human Understanding. How's that for a grandiose title? So we would see people, with traditional counseling kind of issues. I was there for about 3 months, and I came home and I told my wife, I said, if I have to listen to one more rich person bitching about their life, I'm going to be one of them. Right. I said, I don't want to do this. And I discovered that because of the way Dan Miller is wired, this has nothing to do with the profession, believe me. But knowing me, I am way too impatient for that process.
Right.
I want things to happen quickly. And I started working with people before we knew what to call it, before coaching was really a popular term. But I started working with people, short, intensive burst of focused activity, change what you do and get new results in your life. Now, that's not really a traditional counseling model. And I just simply left counseling and started doing this other thing. And it was over the years that I realized what I was doing was what is now called coaching. But that serves me really well. My most popular process that I've got today is called the Eagles Club coaching process. It's 4 2-hour sessions. In that period of time, I expect us to get a clear understanding of where are you, what's unique about you, what is the focus going to be for you moving forward, what are the options for that, what's the best option, and a plan of action, boom. And all that all happens within 48 days. Now, that's very much not a counseling model. But that's a model that has worked extremely well for me, and it attracts people who find that very appealing. They don't want to commit to an unknown period of time where something may happen, something may not. They want to come in and know there's a process we're going to walk through. We're going to do this at blazing speed and walk into the next season of their life. So yeah, that's why I'm a coach.
Yeah, like I said, I think that we really are kind of kindred spirits. In one of the things, if you're in an initial session with me, I always describe my process very much as, where are you at now and where do you want to be? That's what I focus on. There's lots of mental health barriers, and we've talked about some of them on the show. We'll talk more about, biological depression and anxiety and bipolar disorder and different things that you probably remember back from your psychology days and stuff. I mean, they really act as barriers, but I'm action-oriented too. I couldn't agree more. And it's funny because it sounds like you've been doing coaching for a very long time, and kind of the world caught up with you.
That's a great description, because it really wasn't as refined as it is today, where it's become more and more popular. Back then, if you told people you're a coach, they were like, baseball or soccer?
Yeah, right. Well, I always introduce myself now as a mental health and substance abuse therapist, because when I say I'm a therapist, they're like, "Oh, you do physical therapy,"
Ah.
So I just go through the whole description with that.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought would do, Dan, I wanted to see what you would do with some of these things, as I've studied about some of the components that seems to be a big part of your work. And man, I asked her permission a couple of times, actually. My wife Lisa, I want to describe, kind of what she's got going on, and sort of weave that in a little bit to some of the things I wanted to really pick your brain about. Thought that might be a little bit of a fun way to go about that. Does that sound interesting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so because she's a highly experienced person that works with what's called the CDSA in North Carolina, the Child Development Services Administration. It's a state position, so people that are age 0 to 3 are getting tough medical diagnoses of their kid, on the autism spectrum or various things like that. And with a state job, she very much gets caught into a lot of
bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, paperwork. I mean, and I remember I did that in the state system. We did an intake with somebody, and I literally had 40 pages of material that we had to go through.
Wow.
All these little forms, and you end up getting stuck in that. And so she might be an interesting way to look at burnout is something that I think that I could say she deals with.
Mm-hmm.
So weaving that into what we want to talk about, how she might be able to benefit, or how you might coach someone through such a dynamic process as 48 days, which sounds like no time at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
sure.
What would your opening to someone in that situation be, to kind of catch them into like what they can really do?
Absolutely. Great setup. And with her, I would first identify, is this something you really have a passion for? There's probably a reason that you're doing this. You really did have affinity for the kind of work that you're doing, but now you're kind of trapped inside a very cumbersome system. If that's true, then let's look at other ways that we can apply your passion for that, but take you outside of that system. You could do an ebook for parents of children with autism. You could do a special event where 4 times a year you do a morning workshop, 3 hours long, where you do that. You could have a membership community on site where you connect parents who are experiencing similar kind of challenges, and they pay $10 a month to be part of that community. And golly, you have 3,000 parents that are part of that. All of a sudden, you get a $30,000 a month income from that, doing the same thing, but finding different application for how to allow people to access your area of expertise. So she's not trapped in that job. And if she has the skills to do that well, those can be leveraged in 10 different ways to give her freedom and a totally different lifestyle.
Interesting. We just did a show. What was it? The last show that we recorded? I don't think it's released yet.
On technology anxiety? Yes.
Tell them about what we did and how that might apply to someone like Lisa, who's doing those sound very technical, I guess is my point. So how
Oh my, you're talking to a guy here on a technology scale of 10. I'm probably a 2.
Oh,
Man, I mean, I have no more idea how to set up a website than, a first grader. I don't know those things at all. But you know what? It's really easy to tap into the expertise of people who do understand that. That's not where I want to spend my time. I don't do technology at all. But I got a team around me who, my gosh, they're brilliant in that. So, yeah, there's online communities, my mastermind, the kind of services we offer on online courses where people can just go to our site and just purchase a course. They can do that at 3 o'clock in the morning and start working on it and see me in video teaching it to them. Those are things that are, the logistics of that are really simple to put into place. My focus is at creating great content.
Right. Around the issue that you feel passionate about is what I definitely pick up from you.
That's right.
Kind of really stems from the passion.
Totally. Yep.
Right.
Got to be there. Without that, it's not worth pursuing. And thus, if Lisa is burned out, if she really is burned out, then let's look at other skills she's got. Let's look at other things that would be possibilities, and I'm sure there's plenty of things there to draw from as well. I've had the pleasure of working with physicians, attorneys, dentists, pastors, people like that who feel, by virtue of their academic background and work experience, they feel somewhat trapped in what they're doing. No, they're not.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they're making $400,000 a year. If that needs to be part of what you experience moving forward, that's fine. But let's look at other things that we can do to get you out of this misery that you're describing.
Right.
That's a very doable process.
And you find that people, how do you find that you're able to buy people into that? I guess I'm saying, how do you work with them to get them over the hump with their fears and doubts and anxieties with technology or whatever else it might be?
Well, that's part of why they're going to commit to a coaching process.
Right.
They do feel often trapped by their own fears and insecurities and lack of confidence. And so that's the power of working with a coach. Now, I don't want to, as a coach, just blow smoke and just tell them, hey, this is going to be a walk in a park. But those things, there are ways to walk into those with confidence. I'm standing here in my office, and Craig, I don't know if you remember this or if you were in my office, but there's a beautiful painting in here on the wall back in the alcove. And the young man who did that came to me as pastor of a Baptist church. He'd had a real dramatic change in his own life, and he thought, wow, the most godly thing I can do is be a pastor. So he went to seminary, got ordained in as pastor of a little Baptist church. They were paying him peanuts. He was working as a desk clerk at a hotel during the week, overnight, just to try to have enough money to keep the lights on in his house with 5 little kids. And I was like, man, who sold you this bill of goods? He was really taken back. He thought, my goodness, isn't this the most godly thing I could be doing? I says, nah, this doesn't fit you. You're an imposter. You're trying to be something you're not.
Wow.
You're trying to do something that you think is godly, but it doesn't fit you. What is it that when you're doing it, you really come alive? Wow, he immediately started talking about he would go into a room in their little rented house, lock the door, put on Beethoven or Mozart, and he'd paint. That was his cathartic release. That was where he felt like he was in the zone. I had him quit everything he was doing, including pastoring the church. For 4 years, he did faux finishes. So using brushes, sponges, rags on walls, he created these dramatic effects. That gave him the income and the time freedom to move into doing these beautiful, beautiful paintings that he does. He does nothing but music-themed art. They're real, bold, abstract colors. Well, today, he's making 10 times the money he ever dreamed of making as a pastor. Did he walk away from his calling? No. He wasn't in his calling. He was trying to be something he wasn't. We found that sweet spot. And in that sweet spot, there's a blend of 3 legs on a stool: passion, talent, and money. He found that. Wow. His life just exploded. God, they bought their first house. Kids all went to Belmont College here in Nashville. And, just totally dramatically changed his life. And we didn't pursue that. We didn't pursue that because of money. That would be a ridiculous direction to go if we were just looking at money. Because what do we know about artists? Gee, they starve.
Yeah,
but
they do.
It was because We figured out that was his passion. That's where he came alive. That's what fit him. Now, that's not me, but it was him. So let's build on that, even if it seems impractical to people looking in from the sidelines. That's how authentic this needs to be. But once we find that spot, people can walk into a new season of their life with boldness, enthusiasm, confidence, and money in the bank.
Man, we are only on audio, and you have just made a passion in me to see this daggone picture you're talking about, man. Can we get a shot of that?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to see it because, I can hear it when you're talking about it and drawing out from people, and I love doing that in my work as well. Dan, kind of, in the psychology world, it's kind of, I guess, what makes you tick or that kind of thing. But that's not the way I see it. I hear you talking about, what turns people on, what really gets your engine going, what can you really get excited about? And man, when you're living in the middle of that, you can't help but be energetic about it. And
that's right.
I hear you talking a lot about that. You mentioned the 85% factor is what I saw in my research, and that's all about the passion inside you, right?
That's right. 85% of the process is looking inside. 85% of the process of having the confidence of proper direction in our career or life comes from looking inward. We're too quick to just look at what Uncle Harry did or the guy down the street, or here's somebody making a killing on Amazon online. That doesn't matter. What is authentically fitting for you? It's in that spot that we're going to find your greatest opportunity.
So I guess I might ask Lisa the question tonight, what she's passionate about, huh?
Absolutely. Fair question.
Yeah, and Dan, how does somebody go through that process to figure out who they are? I think a lot of folks, and I've heard you talk about this before, is, get a job in technology because it pays well or whatever. So, but how does somebody really dig inside themselves and say, oh, okay, this is what drives, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I enjoy?
Well, part of that process, that 85% process of looking inward, requires identifying what are your unique skills and abilities. Not just what you can do, but what you enjoy doing, where you do feel like you're in that zone of genius. Anybody with a little life experience ought to be able to identify those things. The number two area then is personality traits. How do you relate to other people? What kind of environment are you most comfortable in? How do you manage, persuade, sell? Those are key indicators to help us what this ought to look like moving forward. The third area is then what I call values, dreams, and passions. What are those recurring things? Oh my gosh, it's when I'm working with kids that I really come alive. Or it's when I'm working on ideas and not even around people. It's when I'm inside that I really feel energized because of the energy from the other people. No, it's when I'm out in the middle of the woods. I mean, there's no right or wrong about any of that. But again, a little life experience. I mean, you can be 26 years old and have enough time frame to look back on those 10 years and see recurring patterns. That's where we put that together and start to get a clear focus. Then we start to look at what would that require on a Monday morning for you to be doing to blend those things that we now know about you. That's where it becomes very individualized. So it doesn't matter who's hiring, what positions there are. No, how can we find or create then the work, the daily activities that blend those things so you have that sense of being in that perfect sweet spot all week long.
And I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I hear what you're saying, and I think people tend to get a little grandiose about that. So I've got to be, a CEO, or I've got to be, a famous musician, or, you mentioned artist and whatnot. I wonder if part of what you're talking about, there might be some kid that just sees cars rolling down the street and gets really passionate and geared into what makes that thing work, what makes that thing run, how can I fix that thing? I mean, we could be talking about really, like you said, anything, right?
Oh, yeah. I had a question today from a young guy who's a freshman in college because his parents want him to be there. He's getting a degree in mechanical engineering. But he said he's really bored. He really wants to go across town to a technical school where he can learn how to be a mechanic because he loves motorsports. And he said, but should I give up on following my passion because I'm going to be bypassing a more secure income? Oh my gosh, what a narrow vision. You think you can make yourself do well in something traditional and bypass your passion? No, I'm totally on the other side. Let's go with your passion. You want to be in motorsports? Wow. Jeff Gordon's doing pretty well. Darrell Walter, my neighbor here, did pretty well in that arena. I mean, you can be a mechanic. You can be a NASCAR mechanic and make $150,000 a year. I mean, let's follow that. Let's play that out. You're way more likely to be successful there than trying to force yourself into some narrow, dictionary of occupational titles category.
Now, Craig, just so the audience knows, I had no idea the guy talked to a mechanic today.
Chris has had some car trouble.
Indeed.
Oh my gosh, I have, Dan.
Well, we appreciate people who have those skills, don't we?
I did. I literally was leaving a wedding. Hey, Julie, by the way, she just got married. Julie Fox. Shout out to my dear friend. We're leaving, Dan, and we got the car packed up, and I had just used the car 3 minutes before that, and the car wouldn't idle, and it couldn't start. I had to get a tow, take it to the garage. It was awful. I very much appreciate mechanics.
Well, my Corvette is in the shop today as we speak, but hey, I know I have total confidence those guys are going to be able to take care of it, and I'll be screaming the streets of Franklin tomorrow.
I hope they have passion.
Yes.
Listen, in therapy, I have a thing that I'll often work with people on. I heard it in college, and I've used it in my work with people many times over, having a 1, 5, and 10-year plan. The way it works for me is real simple. You take a piece of paper, and on the front of the paper, you write down all the things that you want to accomplish between now and a year from now. And then the back side of it, I'm a pen and paper guy, as you can tell. And, 2/3 of the page or 3/4 of the page is what you want to accomplish now and 5 years from now. And then the smallest part, 1/3 or 1/4, is what you want to accomplish 5 or 10 years, between now and 10 years from now. And I find that creates a nice plan of action. Curious how you work with people on developing a plan for their passion.
Yes, I'm very much one to require that as part of the process. Tell me what you want your life to be like 3 years from now. I use 3 years. I used to use 5 and 10, but I find that people are so short-term minded today that I pretty much focus on 3. Tell me what you want your life to look like, and what you want a day to be like, what you want to experience physically, relationally, spiritually, all those areas. Tell me what the ideal would be, and then we can start to make deposits in that arena. I have a mastermind. We had a party here in 2015, and it was Come As You'll Be in 2020. So people,
Nice.
got really into it. We had elaborate video rolls being played and cars that were rented that drove up here. Come As You'll Be. It was phenomenal. Now, we have all that on video, and in 2020, we're going to look at those video.
Oh, nice.
That is the coolest thing ever. That is a nice application to a. I might have to change it. I'll have to think about that. A 1, 3, but I got to keep the 5, man. 1, 3, and 5-year plan.
Sure. Yeah. But when you're talking to somebody who's 37 years old, boy, it's hard for them to think 10 years out. So I just, again, I used to do that, but I've shortened it to 3. And if they can get clear on that, it's amazing how if we can get clear about where we want to go, the doors just start opening for us. There's a lot of people walking around who have no clue. They're so unclear. And then they wonder, why nothing great is happening. Yeah, they're just what Zig Ziglar used to call a wandering generality. They're just kind of bumping into walls and then go off. And I see people do that with their careers. They lose their job. Gee, they just go out, hey, I'll do whatever you want me to do. That's a really weak position. That's why that 85% of looking at ourselves gives us a boldness, a confidence to go out here and let the world know what it is we do with excellence, unlike anybody else on the face of the earth. That's attractive. Companies are looking for people like that, and you can leverage that into magnificent opportunities.
Well, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Dave Ramsey's material, because Dave, he ties it to a specific piece with finances, but I feel like key, and I hear you talking as well a lot about the emotion underneath of it and the clarity. I mean, you develop a financial plan with his material. I mean, it's what do you want your money to do for you, rather than feeling helpless and sitting back waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, be specific. Spend it in advance.
Right.
So you don't just look over your shoulder and see what happened. Nope, make the decisions in advance. And we encourage people to do the same thing in other areas of their lives. Decide in advance. I mean, right now, heading into the new year, I have all my goals set in 7 different areas of my life very, very clearly by November 14th. Now, that happens to be 48 days before the new year starts, so it works for me. But what is interesting is what happens between November 14th and January 1st. Now, theoretically, I tell myself, I don't have to do anything in that period of time. It's time to just enjoy family. I don't have to think about anything, not start any new projects. But it's amazing what happens in terms of accomplishment in that period of time, just because it's so clear in my mind what's going to happen in that coming year.
Well, that's a nice transition. We've already talked a little bit about this next thing that I had kind of on our mind, I think, Craig. The idea of you just said 48 days. What is it with you about 48, man? Is there something with that?
Oh, absolutely. My goodness.
The definition. How you define success is what that made me think of.
Okay.
And we've talked about that a little bit today, but knowing, the passion inside and defining it. I mean, I think people define it as being rich or being famous or being different things. I mean, how would you really define success given some of what we've talked about?
Well, I have a definition, and it's certainly not original with me, but it's the, oh my gosh, all of a sudden my mind went blank. I get here it is, the progressive realization of worthwhile goals. That's it. Now, with that definition, though, you can see somebody who's a sophomore in high school can be successful. The progressive realization of worthwhile goals. Somebody can choose to go to Haiti and help build schools and live on $20,000 a year. They're successful. With that definition, it allows us, as long as we know what those worthwhile goals are and are moving toward those, we are instantly successful. It's not an end game, it's a journey. And I can help somebody who feels like they're struggling see themselves as successful before they walk out of my office.
That's neat. That is a really cool definition. I think I almost want to write that down. I'm going to have to listen back to that and write that down.
That's a great definition. I think society tries to define success, but I think that's a better definition than what society tries to do. Hey, Dan, real quick, tell us about 48 days. Why 48 days?
All right, sure. Back in the early days of doing what I do, my company was called The Business Source. I mean, isn't that oatmeal? My goodness, how could it be? I choose more 3 generic words. But anyway, that's what it was. But I started developing material to help people walk through this process. So it was, find the job you love, and then it was, find the job you love in 30 days. And then I realized that a lot of people were telling me, I'm not sure I want another job. And so I changed that to work. And then I thought, 30 days, it doesn't really get anybody's attention. It's just one of those generic time frames, a week, a month, a year, boom. This was back when 48 Hours was becoming popular as a TV show. And I thought, I'll bet I can get some branding recognition. It's an unusual number. It's a number that would make people ask why. And when I put that in there, 48 days to the work you love, it was like somebody poured gasoline on my business.
Wow.
People instantly were, you mean I really can change my life in 48 days? And my response then as now is, yes, you can, if you create a clear plan and act on it. But it was just a marketing trick. I thought I'd use it for a month and then move on to something else. It was that powerful. And ultimately, titled one of my books, and ultimately the title of our company. Everything is based on 48 days. And here's the power of that, guys. If you do a Google search for career coaches, you're going to get 10, 12 million hits. I'm in there somewhere, I'm sure. I have no idea where, and I really don't care. You put in 48 days, I own that. I mean, I'm going to own the first couple pages of a Google search. I don't do any fancy SEO. I don't pay for ads or anything like that. It's just because I'm known as the guy in that sea of sameness of coaches. I'm the guy who says you can make a dramatic change in your life in 48 days. Not just if you go through this process and we hope that you feel better at the end. No, I'm the one, and I really am adamant about that. I mean, I'll work with somebody. If on day 49 they're doing the same thing they were on day 1, hey, that's fine. I'll still love you and be your friend. I'm moving on. I'm moving on to somebody who is going to be committed to making changes in that period of time. And I've been through that hundreds and hundreds of times.
Well, that's really cool. I admire you for how you found and jumped onto those things. A little writing project Through a Therapist's Eyes, and I didn't really realize it, I think, until I'm looking back on the editing stage, which I'd really like to pick your brain about how to edit, because I hate that stuff. That's terrible. But action, being action-oriented and thinking about what actions can you take. I hear you really talking about what's the next action that I can take. Is that a key in some way?
Very, very much so. This is not just a thinking, musing, philosophizing, gathering more knowledge kind of process. No, not at all. I mean, I have a lot of people who want to start more entrepreneurial kind of ventures. I had a guy who wanted to become a coach. So last year, 2017, he went to 7 major conferences. He says he read 110 books. Now, some of those were audio, but 110 books. He generated exactly 0 in income. I said, dude, you don't have a business. You don't have a career. You just have a hobby. All you're doing is adding knowledge. You can't do that. This is not about just adding more knowledge. You have to very quickly move into taking action. So yeah, it's very much combined with taking action. I'm not somebody just to do the head work and be content with that. This is specific action that needs to be taken.
Okay. So think about that, right? Because I talk with people a lot about that and taking actions and whatnot. And one of the things I find, which is a nice transition to something else I was thinking about talking today. This isn't me, but I can hear people. Actually, I hear their voices when they say, well, okay, I can take action, but, well, then I'll fail. And so I see a big fear of failure whenever you get there, jump into the pool and try to swim. What happens when I can't swim? So, how do you handle hardships? How do you handle those challenges that are inevitably going to come into our face when we take a step to do something?
Absolutely. We have to reframe how we describe risk and failure. If you really let those words loom large, you'll stop. You'll just keep things as they are. We know that in order to get new results, there has to be change. Change is always intimidating. It's always easier just let's keep things the way they are. I don't want to walk into anything where I don't have a chance of failure. Now that may sound counterintuitive, but it's really not. If I don't have a chance of failure, geez, it's a no-brainer. It's something anybody else can do. I start things, even in setting my goals for the upcoming year, I set my goals not so I can hit them 100%. I set my goals so I've got about a 50-50 chance of hitting it. If I ever had a year where I hit all my goals, I'd be mortified. I thought, oh my gosh, I set things way too low.
Wow.
So I purposely, but now let's take an example on that, Chris.
Okay.
Let's say that we've got somebody who's in sales. So this year they made $50,000. Or last year they made $50,000. This year they want to make $100,000. So they work. Boy, they're really doing well. They're really getting up there. Boom. And here we are, December 15th. Oh my gosh. They got sick. They got sick for a week. They were out. We're going to end the month, and they're only going to be at $87,000 for the year. Was that failure? Geez, they wanted to make $100,000. They didn't hit that. But last year they made $50,000. That's significant progress. That's always how I look at these things. There are a lot of things that I've set as goals where I've failed, but in terms of how other people see it. But see, I don't even allow myself that kind of terminology. I never fail. There's only 2 outcomes when I do something. Either I win or I learn. I've been through some pretty significant bumps in the road. That's how I frame those. Those weren't failures. Those were necessary steps to getting to where I am today, even though anybody looking in would see it as failure.
I hear a quote in there. I either what did he say, Craig? I either win
or learn. Yeah.
Or learn.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Those are the only two options.
You ever hear of Chumbawamba?
Yeah.
I love their song, man, and I've played it a time or two when I was frustrated. You know, I get knocked down and I get up again. I feel like that has such a strong mentality, and I hear you talking about, you know, you are going to fail and get knocked down, but getting back up and going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my goodness. I mean, life would be boring if everything you attempted was successful. I mean, it really would. So, yeah, I view that word much differently. You know, risk is one of those words as well. Well, gee, I don't want to risk, you know, I'm in this job, you know, they pay me. I hate my job. It's sucking the soul out of me, but at least they pay me every Friday. Wow, is it risky to leave that? No, it's risky to stay there because you're compromising all kinds of other areas of success that you ought to have evident in your life. Man, get out of there. That's not risk. That's self-destruction to stay there.
I mean, I must admit, Craig, you know, I might like it if I accomplish all my goals.
No, I think there is something to be said for setting the bar high, and then, you know, like Dan said, if you set it to 100,000 and you made 50 last year, and you missed the goal and you still make 87, I mean, I'll take that every day. You know, I'll take that failure every day.
Yeah, we can look at it like this. Let's say that we've got somebody who's a high jumper. So we have the bar. How do we know how good that person is? As long as they clear the bar, we don't really have a measurement of how good they are. It's only if we keep raising the bar until they trip it that we've got a true measurement of how good they are. A lot of people are just settled for mediocrity because they always get over the bar. Yeah, they're doing that. But my gosh, is that a stretch to greatness or a measurement of what they're really capable of? Not at all.
I love metaphors, and that really puts it into a picture. I mean, I was preparing for this show to talk, and the phrase came to mind, you know, does failure lead to success? I hear a resounding yes.
Oh, my. I have people. I went through, well, Dave Ramsey and I crashed and burned the exactly same month, same year. We didn't know each other then. We met about a year and a half later. But horrendous crash. And I have people, I did an interview earlier this afternoon, and they're like, what would you have told your 20-year-old self, you know, to avoid some of those things? I said, man, I would have told him to get ready for the ride of your life. This is going to be exciting. I said, there is no way I would have told that 20-year-old information that would have allowed them to avoid that experience, because that experience was a necessary step to get to where I am today. I totally avoid that.
Are you really able to do that in the moment? I could hear some people maybe listening to our show thinking, all right, you know what? How do you do that in the moment of your great? You just said you crashed. I don't know what you mean by that, and I don't want to out something that I think is public, though. But for instance, were you really in $438,000? I mean, you could not have felt good then, Dan.
But here's the deal. What were my options? A couple different ways to look at this. My options were to get up the next morning. There were some major changes that had happened with the bank where I had just a handshake relationship. The bank changed ownership 3 times in 2 years. All the people that were my friends were gone. These new dudes, suits from New York, were in there saying, golly, we got this guy that we've got these open lines of credit. We don't want to do that. We're going to put the screws to him. I could have gotten up and said, those SOBs, boom, boom, boom. Gee, the IRS, you know, they're breathing down my back, penalties and interest. Why don't they leave me alone? No, I got up the next morning, looked at that dude I saw in the mirror and said, all right, you got us into this. How are you going to get us out of this? At that moment, the next morning, trust me, I really did. My wife will attest to that. There was no way I was looking for an easy out or looking to point fingers. I said, this is something that I created. I got to get us out of this. Now, if somebody's not willing to do that, it just prolongs the misery. Sure, it's going to drag it out forever. But I started from day one. What am I going to do to unravel this mess that I created?
I hear really taking personal responsibility and ownership in both the, I guess you call it the crash, but the solution and the solution-focused, oriented way of thinking through something. So,
now, the other thing, the other option I had to look at was with that mountain of debt. I'm an entrepreneur from the top of my head to the tip of my toes. That's what got us into that mess. If I had just taken a job at General Motors, get my salary and 2 weeks vacation, I would have never created that mess. So at that period of time, I could think, wow, I need to do that. I need to quit this crazy path that is so appealing to me. I need to go get a real job. I was employable. I was already an adjunct professor at the university. I could have gotten a position teaching, make $60,000, $70,000. I couldn't make the math work. How would I ever unravel that mess financially with a wife and 3 kids? I mean, I'd be 99 years old and still trying to take care of it, and we'd still be eating rice and beans. Guess what? Instead of taking that responsible, logical step to get a job, I just simply rolled the dice. I need to get into something where there's no guarantee, no salary, no benefits, but no ceiling. And that's exactly what I did instantly.
It's a nice, perfect little lead-in. I swear I didn't plan this way. Procrastination. Boy, is that a little devil. What do you do with somebody who's procrastinating? Elisa, if you will, or the car mechanic who has this idea, or the golfer who wants to get on tour, or, what have you. I don't hear a lot of procrastination in that time frame that you were in that crash.
Well, I don't allow myself that. Yeah, I'm my own harshest taskmaster. There's no question about that. I don't have anybody looking over my shoulder, but I do have Dan Miller telling me, you got to accomplish this in this period of time. So I do that. I set timelines for myself that are pretty harsh. Now, if somebody's not willing to do that, and they're going to, read one more book or go to one more conference or listen to one more podcast, then you're just going to prolong the process. But if you really want to make change, let's create a timeline. Let's decide how many people are you going to contact this week. If it's knocking on doors, let's say that you're going to knock on 15 before noon tomorrow. I used to play games with myself. And some of the things I moved into in that period of time that I just described were commission-only sales. I would play games with myself where I'd say, I'm going to sell 2 of this that I'm selling before I allow myself to eat lunch. Now, sometimes I didn't eat lunch till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's okay. But I would do things like that with myself to force me to be productive, not just putting in time and pat myself in the back because I tried. No, in getting results that I needed to get to start walking out of that mess. So procrastination, man, I hear people, gee, I'm going to pray about it. Well, that sounds sweet. It's politically correct way to procrastinate.
Nice.
Get in the game. Get in the game.
It's yeah, I hear you. And I was thinking about creativity. I mean, I hear you creating a lot. I think I heard you talking about waiting for perfection. What does waiting for a perfect product or a perfect ability, how does that play into procrastination?
Well, trying to get something perfect is, again, kind of a politically correct way to justify indecision and procrastination.
Right.
That's it.
I was thinking about these different things, having a plan and having passion, defining success, handling hardships. Man, I mean, we cover a lot of the things I think that hold people up. When I was kind of thinking of a summary, I don't know if I heard you talking about it, Dan, or if it was my thoughts when I was just kind of going through this. Where I arrived was, it was listening to you, I think. You talked about not doing a lot of the things that your company actually does. It was working with others.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
How much is working with others a key to really all these things, overcoming procrastination and unlocking your passion, developing a plan, handling hardships? How much does that include that concept of others in your life?
Very, very much so. I mean, I have a little business, but in a little business like this, there are probably 20, 25 different things that need to be done. I'm probably pretty good at 2 or 3 of those. I don't spend my time trying to figure out, technology or accounting. I mean, I'm terrible at those things.
I have Craig.
Golly. All right, good. Well, I as well have people who are very competent at that, whose skills complement my own. I want to stay really focused on those 2 or 3 things that I do well. I don't want to dilute that by trying to become good at everything. That's a real fallacy. You know, sometimes we draw even from martial arts where you work on your weaknesses. Well, in real life, you work on your weaknesses, you're likely to end up mediocre in a whole lot of things. I mean, it's like there's a story about, you know, the animals decided they were going to have a school for their offspring. So the first day of school, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Duck sent off little Donald Duck to school. Well, he's a great swimmer, but in school they want you to learn to climb trees, you know, learn to fly, and learn to run really fast, to be well balanced. Well, after a couple of weeks in school, his little feet are so sore from trying to climb trees that he can't swim very well anymore. A lot of people approach life like that. They think, well, I'm not good. You know, I'm not good with people. I'm not an extrovert. I really am energized by solitude, but I need to learn. I need to force myself to get out there with people. Well, you'll end up being miserable most of the time. Find where your unique strengths are and then honor those, embrace those, be really good at that, become known as an expert in something rather than just trying to be all things.
You know, that's a refreshing perspective because I do feel like we have an ideal perspective. Craig, I think you said a little bit ago with finances or whatnot that, you know, society tells us, right? Mm-hmm. What we're supposed to be. And it just seems like it, you know, a summary that you are talking more about is, you know thyself. I hear that a lot from you.
And to thine own self be true, then thou canst not be false to any man. That's a great theory. Absolutely. Know yourself.
Sounds like a way of life.
It really is. I mean, here's an example that you'll appreciate because you know Dave Ramsey. So Dave and I were together 30 years ago trying to figure out what we were going to do when we grew up and put our big boy panties on. We outlined exactly where we are today. Now, I'm working, as Craig knows, here on a converted barn on the back of our property. I'm all by myself. There's nobody else in the building here. I have no employees. Dave is building a new campus as we speak. As part of that, the concessions from the city of Franklin, he's committed to have 1,000 employees. Now, that would keep me awake at night and cause me to throw up in the morning. There's no right or wrong about it. It's just Dave knows Dave, Dan knows Dan. I love what Dave is doing. Dave loves what I'm doing. It's very, very different, but it's to thine own self be true. That's the only reason for that vast disparity in what our businesses look like today.
Wow. So you're different than Dave is what you're saying.
Oh, my. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Well, listen, man, I would love to hang out with you for 2 more hours. You good with that? How would you summarize things, man, you know, to the Lisas and the people that you're working with? Is there any way that you pull all that together in a snapshot, so to speak?
Well, one of the things that has been encouraging for people is I tell people it's never too late to have a new beginning. You know, I talk to 27-year-olds who say, I majored in the wrong thing in college. And they give the impression that now I just have to kind of coast into the grave. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. You aren't old enough to ask good questions yet. You know, it doesn't work that way. And I don't care if somebody's 65 and just coming out of a very successful career. What are you going to do the next 20 years of your life? And it's in those periods of time, those transitions, that often we find really a much more clarity and focus for meaningful work, life moving forward. So yeah, it's never too late to have a new beginning. Doesn't matter where you are. It's easy to draw a line in the sand, take a fresh look at yourself. I mean, we used to give a lot of kind of honor to just loyalty and longevity. So somebody's been on the job for 20 years. Oh man, that's the kind of person we want. Not in today's environment. Companies often look at that person kind of askew, thinking, wow, has this person kept up? You know, why haven't they moved and changed and grown? Well, that's probably wise counsel. But yeah, you can create new beginnings. Man, I like to create a new beginning every morning.
Change is scary, but it sounds exciting.
Oh, it is. I would be so bored. Twice I've kept businesses too long. Not because there's anything wrong with the businesses, but because I simply got bored. The worst thing for me, and again, this is just me, the worst thing for me is predictable success. I will immediately start to sabotage and walk away from it. I have to find a way to have new challenge in what I'm doing. My wife calls me today, a 3-year man. She knows that's pretty much the maximum of anything keeping my attention. So I built at this point a business model where I can have that ongoing change. Now, from the outside, you'll see some components that may remain the same, but there are pieces that are moving at any given time, and there are pieces that are on the bubble that may be eliminated.
Right. Wow. Yeah, it is a refreshing perspective, and I definitely want to refer our audience to your material. I feel as though I may have found the fourth thing that really seems to have some foundations that are really similar. Dave's stuff, your stuff, Love and Logic, and John Gottman. I'm gonna have to do some thinking about that.
All right, cool.
Yeah, so
be honored to be in that list.
So Dan, if somebody stumbles upon our show and they're a listener of ours and they feel stuck, obviously finding work that you enjoy is a big part of your mental and emotional state. But how can you help? What can somebody do if they listen and want to find out more about 48 Days and the things that you offer to help people do that?
Sure. Well, thanks for that. 48days.com. I mean, we have a lot of resources there. And of course, my podcast, I have lots of people who listen to my podcast who have not made any significant change and don't intend to. But they're still encouraged by knowing that they're in the driver's seat and just hearing the stories of other people who are walking through these kind of transitions. So I love that opportunity. I go into companies. When I go into companies, it's not with the intention that, gee, everybody here ought to quit and go figure this out. No. For a lot of people, just looking at these issues ought to confirm the right fit of what they're doing. A lot of people are in things because there's a lot of reasons that pointed to that, and they're doing what they ought to do. Another resource in addition to 48days.com is 48dayseagles.com. Now, that's a fairly new community we put together, and these are just people who know they don't want to live lives of mediocrity. The brain power in there blows my mind, and how willing people are to share ideas and resources and help each other. People who are really committed to the success of the other people in there. So those are a couple ways that people can just explore and find something that helps them. I'd be delighted.
Great. I'll include links to those in our show notes too, by the way. So if you're a listener, you can find those on our website too.
Well, Dan, as I said, I am super appreciative of your time, sir, and I think that I know it's been good for me to listen and talk with you, and I appreciate, it's about getting some awareness on mental health and substance abuse issues, and I know we're talking about workplace, but I feel like we've talked about a lot more than that. I just appreciate your time and your brain power towards it.
Well, I'm delighted and honored to be your guest. As therapists, counselors, coaches, hearing people's stories help us figure out our own lives, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yes.
Yep.
Indeed.
What a privilege.
Thanks a lot, Dan. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
Craig, you want to take us out and tell us about what people clicking and where they can find us and all that?
Yeah, obviously, throughwiththerapisteyes.com. You can find out more about the show. You can listen to the show there right on the website. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher and all your popular podcast channels. If you are listening to the show and enjoying it, we would appreciate you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. Anything to add, Chris?
I think that's a wrap. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to be talking about I guess we put it on hold for a week, but I'm super excited about talking about, I mentioned it during the show, I think John Gottman and the EFT model of how a marriage works, and a very large set of commonalities that they're almost universal in relationships. So I'm excited about that one as well.
Should be a great show.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.